So Donald Trump has earned the nickname Teflon Don, but when it comes to indictments and criminal charges, there is plenty that is sticking. The former president has now been indicted 4 times, faces 91 criminal charges. With more on this, let's go to Niall Stanage, White House columnist at The Hill. Niall, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here, Elias. How are you?
I'm doing well. My favorite nugget, factoid that I've seen, and I'm a big baseball fan, is that Donald Trump is now indicted in every single National League East city except for Philadelphia. So just how bad is it now for the former president?
Well, in a legal sense, it's really pretty bad. That's quite a nugget of information you had there as well. I hadn't seen that before. It's obviously bad because there are all these different cases pressing in on him. Now, we probably don't want to get into the weeds of every single one, but some of them pertain to extraordinarily serious events, namely the attempts to overturn the 2020 election. There's also the Mar-a-Lago case down in Florida, which isn't just about sensitive documents. It's also about the former president facing very compelling evidence that he committed obstruction of justice.
And with all the evidence, right, it comes down to consequences. So as you play it out in your mind, what are the consequences here? Because for all the charges and indictments, it certainly doesn't seem like there's been consequences yet.
That's right. I think politically, in particular, the consequences are very unclear. In fact, after the first couple of indictments, at least, the former president saw fundraising boosts, and his poll rating among Republican voters did not decline at all. In fact, it nudged up slightly. And there is one point perhaps worth mentioning to your listeners, which is even a conviction would not constitutionally prevent Donald Trump from becoming president again if he were to win the Republican nomination and then the general election next year. If that happened, he could effectively escape even a conviction in the federal cases by calling off the U.S. Department of Justice. There are 2 state-based cases, the most recent one in Georgia and the very first indictment in New York, where he does not have those powers because the states are sovereign in those instances.
And I've heard in Georgia, and correct me if I'm wrong, the governor of Georgia does not have the power to grant a pardon.
That is correct, which also further complicates the picture and ups the danger level for Mr. Trump.
Okay, let's talk politically about some of the issues here, right? So, because he's still the Republican frontrunner, right? The debates are coming sooner than later, right? The Republican debates in their primary here. So he's still popular within the party, but the question is, okay, he can get through. Maybe he's going to win that nomination, but then he still has to get into a general election. So what do the Republicans do in that scenario?
This is such an important question, and I think one of the things to underline is it just doesn't seem as if many Republican voters buy the argument that Trump is unelectable in a general election. Now, the polling would suggest that he is the weakest candidate Republicans could put up against President Biden. When you poll the entirety of the population, his approval ratings are really quite mediocre. In head-to-head races, he tends to lose to Biden by at least a couple of points. I think there are 2 factors that weigh against that, though. One is simply the loyalty of Republican voters toward him. He's just their guy for a lot of people. And then the other thing is that they do, of course, remember 2016 against Hillary Clinton, when almost no one expected Trump to prevail. And as we all know, he did, albeit by a rather narrow margin.
Will he ever, if he's found guilty, right, does that lead to jail time?
Theoretically, yes. In practice, much more questionable. There are sentences with which he is charged that could carry significant jail time if a normal civilian were convicted of them. The offence of obstruction of justice, for example, carries a maximum 20-year prison sentence in the federal system. The question, though, there are a lot of complicated questions about this. One is, if he were jailed, would he have Secret Service protection in jail? As you know, all presidents have Secret Service protection. So what happens if one is sentenced to prison? But the other question is just whether a judge would actually sentence a former president to jail time, given all the many complications that would bring in its wake.
Niall, as you ponder all of the developments and as you have to report on Donald Trump and his continued popularity, do you ever fall upon a good explanation as to how he can remain so popular amongst Republicans when there seems to be tremendous evidence of serious crimes?
One element of it is that his base seems impervious to that evidence. I mean, it was him who famously said some years ago that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in New York and people would still vote for him. The other thing I would note, Elias, is that a large part of his popularity is based on a kind of defiance of what is perceived to be a liberal consensus or a media consensus, quote-unquote, elites. And so, I don't know if I can say this on radio or not, but there was a phrase about people voting with the middle finger for Donald Trump when he first ran for president, as in voting to annoy or to aggravate or to be defiant of those perceived elites. And I think that mentality still pertains, at least among a large number of his supporters. I
have one question, and feel free to pass, because I don't even know about this question I'm about to ask. Is Donald Trump, is it a political movement or a religious movement?
Well, it is, I suppose, a political movement, but it's like nothing that we have ever seen before. There are other politicians, even in the recent past, who had very fervent political followings. Former President Obama, for example, had a very inspirational effect on his supporters. The thing with Trump is he has been able to survive things that would plainly have been politically fatal to other candidates again and again and again. And we're in just an extraordinarily bizarre situation where we have a twice impeached, 4 times indicted ex-president who is clearly the frontrunner for his party's nomination. It's hard to explain that without resorting to the kind of language that you're talking about, pertaining to sort of religious or cult-like devotion.
That's why I go through all that, and I like, well, there's your explanation. Niall, hey, tremendous discussion. Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Take care.
That's Niall Stanage, White House columnist at The Hill.